Hello and welcome to this particular blog. Now, if you have read the case, you will realize that this can be solved through any method or any approach because it has been taken at all 4 stages. However, today, what I'm going to show you is how you can actually integrate all these different approaches and use it in various ways to analyze a case and analyze and find a remedy at all 4 stages. So this I found is quite efficient because that way you can actually confirm a remedy which can be a similima. So let's look at what information you've received from this patient at stage 1. At stage 1, it's the diagnosis. So it's like an irritable bowel syndrome, there are panic attacks or anxiety attacks. Let's look at stage 2 information by the patient. If you realize stage 2 is this localized symptoms, so she has this tightness in the chest and palpitations with irritable bowel symptoms. So she is aggravated whenever she's traveling or she's in a hurry or she has to go somewhere, has an appointment somewhere, and there's this anxiety and nervousness in the abdomen, which then leads to diarrhea or urging for motions. Now, what's stage 3 information? Now, this is more the general mental and physical symptoms in her case. So you find emotionally there is this extreme fear of losing control. There's this claustrophobia and there's absolute rage, violence, that's anger, which as if she could kill someone, just drive somewhere and get me out of here. It's like this intensity. Now she has this dream of quite a few dreams of sharks and crocodiles and spiders. So there's a lot of fear and anxiety at the subconscious level. Now there are quite a few expressions in her case. There is a rebellious trait in her. There has been a past history of abuse and domination by father, by her sister, and she reacts in a similar way to stronger people around her. So it's especially at work. And there's this cunning deceit and viciousness in her, where she's quite clever and she's really loquacious. So these are her disowned parts in her virtual dreams, in her in the program Underbelly, where she says she really admires how these people can just escape without being really pinned down by the police. And so even if she doesn't relate that in real life, in her actual life, that's a part of her uncompensated stage or her disowned part, which is also part of the remedy picture using a delusional analysis. Let's look at what information you get at stage 4. So the information you get is this intense tightness, trapped and confined state. There's this constriction in the throat and in the abdomen, and she absolutely points to her throat, and suffocation and choked feeling. There's this pain, the sensation of being pinned and squashed, and this desperation to escape. It's as if it's a real threat to her life as in that situation. So now, once you have this information, that is information which is the core, the distillation of all these different. So wherever you go, whichever experience she has in her life, it all boils down to these key words she's been expressing to explain her state at that level. So what we could do here is actually use this information and find what are the remedies which come up. So what we can do is I will use the quest feature to find out how we can put these information and get a repertorial analysis of the same. So I'll put in trapped. The other one in her is tightness. Then there's this constriction. Then there is suffocation. And there is this drowning. So you can play with these and put in different words and which actually relate her core information. Now what you find here is all these different remedies you get which are expressed through these terms. I've especially used single words here because I want to get as much information and rubric database or symptom database which relate to these words. because I don't want to eliminate any remedy at this stage. I want to get them all together, and want to get this word or this expression in whichever form it's present in our database. Now, what I've got is a list of many remedies here, and the list goes on, which you've realized in most repertorizations. But now you can find there's Drosera, there's Rustox, there's Tarantula, there's plutonium. So you have, plants and animals and minerals and all different remedies which have all these sensations. So to make matters simpler, we can actually try and fine-tune the information at stage 4. So how can we do that? So when we have the case here, what we can find is, what is this dynamics about this information in our picture? So let's try and look at what is the dynamics of the patient. Now, the underlying theme of our case is all about being abused, being attacked, and being killed with those words she's used. It's a very dangerous situation. There is this desperate attempts for freedom or she'll die. There's somebody who's stronger than her, who's trying to attack and trap her, and there is this victim aggressor, and there is this whole theme about she might die if she doesn't get out of the situation. Now, if you've read books across kingdom analysis and grouping of remedies across a particular kingdom, you'll realize these words and these themes actually denote an animal kingdom. Now, we always have to confirm for our own self that it's actually a part of the animal kingdom. So this is something where I call expanding our mathematics in understanding what are the keynote symptoms of remedies which belong to the animal kingdom. And we can actually do that. You can use any software where you can do a remedy analysis according to kingdoms and try and find out what are the themes of animals, what are the themes of plants, what are the themes of different minerals, and confirm that for your own self rather than reading them from books. Books are wonderful because they'll give you the confirmation, but you can do that for your own satisfaction, because then you can actually use that knowledge with much more conviction. So let's look at if you can analyze the animal kingdom. So what I'll use is, let's go to the remedy comparison, and I'll put in all the animals which we have in the Mathematica. So there are about 3,000 remedies, and out of that 161 animals in there. And what I can use is, now I want at least 5 remedies which should come in a rubric. So I want all the rubrics which are common to these, at least 5 of these animals at any given time. And I want smaller rubrics here. So at the most, I want just 50 remedies. So I don't get just general rubrics like anxiety or, whatever. I want some real precise rubrics which have at least 5 animals to get a common theme. So these are the themes we get. Now you have themes of being abused, and you have lots of anger themes. But let's look at the delusions, because they give you the core information about these animals. And if you look at the delusion here, you'll find there are quite a few patterns here. So you'll find that there's a delusion of being alone, of being an animal, of being attacked, of being betrayed, of being criticized, of being in danger, of being under a powerful influence, of being injured, of being insulted, of being, so you find people behind him, that they're smaller, and so on and so forth. So if you combine all these themes together, let's see what's happening there. So when you combine all the animal themes and try and understand the common symptoms there, you'll find obviously there are delusions of being different animals, but there is this theme of being attacked, of being in danger, of being injured, of being trapped, of people behind them, escaping by running and flying. And this theme about being under a powerful influence, of being under a superhuman influence, and this tall and short and weak and strong, and feeling really dirty and worthless and being despised. So these are the themes of animals. So once you study all those themes, then you get a grasping of, all right, so these are the themes of animals. And if I find these themes coming up in my patient, not when they talk their first symptom, but at a very core level. Like she was talking about this abuse at a very deep level, and that trapped feeling was confirmed at every situation in her life. So that's the distillation where she was talking about these themes, and that's why we're looking now. So we out of 3,000, 4,000 remedies, now we come to just the animals to confirm. Let's look at the next one. Now, what specific animal species? Now, animals like there are 150 animals. We want to now target to a specific subkingdom and a sub-subkingdom and possibly the source. But let's look at the subkingdom. Now, within this whole dynamics of the aggressor and the victim, you find there's an extreme anguish. There's this rage, there's this anxiety, there's this fear, where she's emptying her bowels or she's vomiting with this anticipation. And the very precise way she's being attacked is being choked and constricted and tightened and pinned to the throat and the abdomen. And she talks about this escapism by deceitness, by slyness, just whichever way get out. And then there is this fear of having a heart problem and having a stroke like her mom. And she relates it exactly to her mom. And that torture which the mom underwent, when dad was abusing the whole family, was this convulsions she had with shrieking. So it was that intense. It was as if she was really reliving it. And also there's this whole viciousness and jealousy with other people and sister and everyone. So that was this whole theme of a very specific subkingdom, and that's the snakes. Now, again, you can actually go back and find the theme of snakes in your Mathematical, just the same way as you did with the animals, and try, and these are the different themes which come up with snake remedies. I'll give you an example again. So if you have, so in the same option, I'll just clear this up and I'll add the snake group here. So just trying to study these animals in different ways is actually a very interesting way of actually fine-tuning your remedy understanding. So these are all your snakes. I'll take 3 snakes because it's a smaller group here. And I'll say compare. And then look at the snake themes which come up. So it's about, there's an abuse here, especially sexual, which is a part of the snake theme. But there's this anticipation from stage fright. And there's this deceitness and slyness and especially being injured, as if there are people behind them. Dreams of crocodiles and alligators and heart problems and apoplexy and suffocation and this whole oxygenation part, which is quite interesting. Death often heart complaints. So the heart is really very strongly related to the snake somewhere. And also this rage and fury. But the most important thing was this torment and anguish, which is really like a stressful situation. So let's go back and try and find out what is it within the snake groups. Okay. So now let's filter this information now, which you got, the whole remedy table you got at stage 4. Let's filter out and just see what snakes come up very strongly there. So the snakes which come up very strongly, so let's go and find out. In the reptiles we have squamata, and in that the snakes. And these are your snakes here. Lachesis, Naja, Crotalus, Cascavella, Horridus, Synchris, Vipera, and so on and so forth. Now, obviously, yes, Lachesis and Naja are the most well-proven remedies. However, what you can do now is, because this whole database of about 3,000 or 4,000 remedies have now been into these 7-8 remedies, which is much more easier now because we have fine-tuned this information and now we just speak about the source. Now, what happens in some cases is they directly start relating to the source. Now, in this case, because I was sure of we are looking at a snake remedy, I asked her a direct question of how she reacts to snake. And the moment I ask her that question, she says, my grandfather used to breed snakes and I'm absolutely not afraid of them. In fact, I have no fear of them choking me, which just came out of the blue because I didn't realize that snakes can choke you in some ways. But for her, that was the whole theme. So I tried to go into each of these remedies and read them in much more detail. If you go into the snake kingdom in much more detail, you'll find there are two separate groups, the elapse and the crotalus. And the elapse have more of being injured, whereas the crotalus have more of this constriction. And in this case, it was absolutely about the constriction rather than being injured, or more strongly than being injured. And you find here there is crotalus group, which is really strong in this case. Now, for me, in this case, I found a very important rubric in her about drowning and suffocation, and I found it was only lachesis which had drowning and suffocation together in one simple rubric. So if I look into drowning, she has asphyxia, drowning from apparent, which I could find in no other snake, and that was the exact reason why I chose lachesis for her, which was a very strong, unique symptom of lachesis rather than any other snake in that whole series. So that's what I ended up giving her, which was lachesis. And now let's see how I can confirm lachesis in other stages as well. So let's go back to the case and let's see what are the rubrics of lachesis at stage 3, stage 2 and stage 1 which confirm her. So this is confirmation at 1 and 2. So obviously if I never took the case at stage 4 and you just had stage 1 and 2 information, you would still have arrived at lachesis. However, that remedy would have been dispersed off in other remedies. But if you knew your remedy well and you really understood lachesis at that level, you could find it. So it has constriction external, tight clothes aggravate, anxiety, palpitation with cramps in the precordial region, anxiety riding aggravates, anxiety in the abdomen, and again pain in the abdomen, aggravated riding. So all her real intense symptoms were covered there. At stage 3, I found these interesting delusions of being powerless, of being persecuted, of being injured, and that she has suffered wrong. So what she spoke in that virtual dream was that he was pinned at the railings. The water force actually pinned him and suffocated him, and it's unfair. Somebody put him there, and it's unfair the way he suffered there. And then she has all these fears of narrow places, of suffocation, dreams of animals, dreams of danger, violent anger, biting, loquacity, jealousy, deceit, cruelty, both her compensated and uncompensated parts, which is very important at stage 3. If you're looking at prescribing only at stage 3, you have to know the remedy on both sides. So there are two sides of the picture, of a remedy picture at stage 3. The other side is also as important as her real side, which I've explained in the blogs before, but that's if you cannot get to stage 4. So that was lachesis at 200, and she came back. She booked in, I think, after 2 weeks, but she could not for some reason, and then she went away for a few weeks, and then we couldn't book her again, and she rang me, I think, after 1 year. And so I called her, and that's what she said. I was surprised when she said, I was very well for an entire year. I didn't have any attack since the first dose. The medicine was wonderful, and I got well for my husband's birthday. So yes, she had come for the first time because she was planning her husband's birthday. They had to travel somewhere, and she had to be in a plane for a few hours, and it was a worst nightmare. Being in a car was worse enough, but being in a plane was unthinkable, and that was exactly why she thought she needed treatment. And the other thing for me, which was very interesting, was she actually went, so she had no contact with her dad. There was an absolute, both the sister and her, they just couldn't, dad had separated and they didn't have any contact with him whatsoever, but she went and spoke with him, and they had a conversation, and I don't remember the details, but what she said was, Dad has just accepted things. My sister still keeps a distance from him, but in some ways she had a closure, which was really hard, really intense for her at that moment. And then work-wise, things were same. So what I did was take the remedy only as and when required. That was the basic thing. And she came, I think once or twice a year to refill the bottle. That was how I saw her. She's not had any panic attacks, nothing out of control. If they did come, there was just a building up of anxiety, but nothing as compared to what she had, running to a toilet and really desperately trying to find a next service station. She could wait, and the symptoms would go. And that was the last thing I think she said. I don't know why this calmness has come over. So that whole anguish and that whole desperation and this whole torture was gone, and that anxiety which had ruled her for 15 years dissipated, which was for me a huge learning experience with lechesis, because that was one of my first cases where a person didn't require a dose for such a long time. Normally people do require, but I don't think it has something to do with, even if there are similar amounts, and if you need to take them repeatedly, then you do need to take them. It's just how much the intensity and how what the patient requires at that time. But that was one important learning for me. And the other thing about knowing a remedy like lechesis at stage 4, I knew the remedy at stage 3. We all do as homeopaths, are fascinated by many polycrestin. Lechesis is one of them. And we know one side of the picture. I didn't know the other. The friendly, the jovial, the intense, bubbly lechesis, which was quite different for me. And the other part was actually in the part of the virtual dreams. So the jealous, the cunning lechesis, she wasn't that. It was the other part, which for me was interesting because the virtual dreams got me that. So again, reconfirms for me, if you know just one part, you might miss the other. So I hope this helps you. And I love trying to understand every polycrest in that way. As I would love, if homeopaths can actually share this information and share a remedy understanding at all 4 stages and derive it for their own selves using softwares which can really add to our database and really expand this Mitra Medica, which we can all reuse. You don't have to have 3,000, remedies walking in your clinic to learn. You can learn from each other as well. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this, and hope it inspires you to build up your Mitra Medica and share it with us. Thank you so much, and look forward to see you next time. Bye-bye.